This is not a story about bad choices, and it is not a story about morality. This is a story about patterns. Patterns so deeply embedded in the human psyche that most people never even realize they are living inside them. Especially if you have ever asked yourself, why do I keep choosing the same kind of relationship? Why do I keep getting hurt in the same way? Then you are not facing a simple problem. You are standing at a psychological threshold, and crossing that threshold may be one of the most important turning points in your life. Let's begin with something uncomfortable. What if your life is not as free as you think? What if many of your choices, especially in relationships, desire, and attachment, are not actually conscious decisions, but automatic responses? This is particularly visible in what modern psychology might describe as compulsive relational behavior, or what some frameworks loosely call sexual behavior addiction. But let's be precise. This is not about lack of willpower. It is not about being weak. It is about structure. A deep psychological structure shaped by early emotional deprivation, distorted attachment patterns, and repeated cycles of unconscious reinforcement. And unless that structure is seen clearly, it does not change. There is a powerful insight found in the Tibetan text, Bardo Thadal. It states, what you perceive as reality is often a projection of your own mind. Now, set aside the spiritual language for a moment. From a modern psychological perspective, this aligns remarkably well with what we know about cognitive bias, emotional conditioning, and neural pattern reinforcement. We do not simply see reality. We interpret through the lens of past experience. So when someone repeatedly enters unstable relationships, or seeks intense emotional or physical stimulation, or cannot break away from destructive cycles, it is not random. It is patterned. And that pattern has one defining characteristic: unconscious repetition. Now here is the critical question. Are you living your life or repeating your past? If this question is not answered consciously, the repetition continues indefinitely. Let's break this down structurally. Human life, from a psychological standpoint, can be understood through three interacting forces. 1. Environment. 2. Personality. 3. Choice. These are not independent variables. They form a dynamic system. First, environment. Your mind was not born complete. It was shaped, especially in early childhood, through attachment. The work of John Bowlby demonstrated that early relationships with caregivers form internal working models. Is the world safe? Am I worthy of love? Can I trust others? These are not abstract beliefs. They become emotional reflexes. But here's where it gets deeper. From the perspective of Bardo Thadal, these experiences are not just memories. They become imprints, patterns that continue to generate similar experiences. Second, personality. Personality is not fixed. It is constructed through genetic predispositions, repeated experiences, emotional adaptation. Over time, personality becomes a pattern generator, which is why the avoidant person avoids again. The dependent person depends again. The stimulation-seeking person escalates again. This is not coincidence. This is conditioning. In philosophical terms, you might say, you don't have a personality. You are running a personality pattern. Third choice. Now here is where everything changes. The French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre argued, man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. In other words, you are influenced, but not determined. And this is crucial, because without this, there is no possibility of transformation. So let's summarize. Environment shapes you. Personality repeats you. But choice can change you. Now, let's bring this back to lived experience. Imagine this cycle. A person experiences emotional neglect in childhood. That creates an internal void. That void seeks intensity, attention, validation, stimulation. This leads to unstable or high-intensity relationships, which eventually collapse, leaving behind the same void. This is not just a bad relationship. This is a self-reinforcing psychological loop, a closed system. And unless something interrupts that loop, it continues. But here is the turning point. According to both modern psychology and contemplative traditions, awareness breaks the loop. The moment you can observe your pattern instead of being driven by it, you create separation. And in that separation, choice becomes possible. This is what we call self-reflection. Not thinking, not analyzing endlessly, but seeing clearly. When self-reflection emerges, you are no longer pulled automatically by emotion. You are no longer reacting purely from past conditioning. You are no longer unconsciously repeating. You begin to choose. And this leads to a deeper question. What actually creates a meaningful life? Research across psychology and philosophy consistently points to three factors. 1. Meaningful relationships. 2. A sense of contribution or value. 3. A purpose beyond immediate gratification. Without these, people default to stimulation, and stimulation over time leads to emptiness. Now we must address one more critical factor: social comparison. Most people assume their struggles are internal, but consciousness is shaped socially. We compare constantly. And as the Bardo Fadal suggests, we do not see reality as it is. We see it through our attachments. This leads to two traps: superiority seeking, I must be above others; inferiority collapse, I am not enough. Both come from the same source: external validation. And here is the connection. When self-worth depends on comparison, people seek stronger stimulation to compensate for internal instability, which feeds directly back into compulsive behavior patterns. So understand this clearly. Comparison is not reality. It is interpretation. And most of the time, it is driven by insecurity. Now we arrive at the central insight of this entire lecture. Those who are aware become free. Those who are not repeat. So where are you right now? Are you inside the pattern, or are you beginning to see it? Because the moment you see it clearly, even for a second, your life stops being automatic and starts becoming intentional. If this perspective has shifted something in you, not just intellectually, but internally, then I invite you to continue this journey. Subscribe, like, and share this message so more people can step out of unconscious repetition and into conscious living. In the next lecture, we will go deeper into social comparison psychology and analyze 6 specific personality types that shape how people judge, compete, and manipulate perception. And once you see those patterns, you won't just understand people, you will read them, and that changes everything.